The Silent Watchers. The Endless Vigil. For 43 years, the Zapirian Empire maintained their silent watch over the third planet from the sun. Their massive observation ships floated in the darkness between worlds, hidden behind advanced cloaking, technology that bent light itself around their hulls. To any primitive species looking up at the stars, the Zapirian fleet was invisible, nothing more than empty space dotted with distant suns. Commander Krell stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Gaze, his forearms crossed behind his back, as he studied the blue-green world spinning slowly below. His species had evolved on a harsh desert world where water was scarce, and survival meant constant vigilance. The sight of Earth's abundant oceans and green continents filled him with a mixture of envy and disgust. Such a rich world wasted on such a backward species. "Status report, Officer Nix," Krell commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades climbing the ranks of the Imperial Navy. Nix, a younger Zapirian with the distinctive silver markings of her clan, approached with a datapad clutched in her lower arms. Her species communicated as much through color changes in their scaled skin as through words. And right now her scales showed the deep blue of confusion mixed with concern. "Sir, the humans continue their primitive routines. Their largest military vessels are still those crude metal ships that float on their water surfaces. Their aircraft are slow and loud. Their space program barely reaches their own moon." She paused, her scales flickering to a lighter shade. "However, I continue to detect unusual energy readings." Krell's own scales darkened with annoyance. "You've been reporting these so-called unusual readings for months, Nix. Our science division has analyzed every report. They're natural phenomena. Volcanic activity. Tectonic shifts. Nothing more. Sir, with respect, the patterns are too regular. The energy signatures appear to be following some kind of sequence, and they're coming from locations that don't match any known geological activity." Nix's scales had shifted to the orange of determination. "I've identified 17 distinct source points around the planet. Each one shows the same type of energy buildup, always at the same time intervals." The Empire's Judgment Commander Krell had heard enough. He activated the communication array that connected his ship to the Imperial High Command, located in the heart of the Zapirian Empire 700 light-years away. The holographic projection of Admiral Vax appeared before him, the Elder's ancient scales bearing the scars of 1,000 battles. "Report, Commander." Admiral Vax's voice carried across the void, each word weighted with the authority of the Empire. "The humans remain as primitive as ever, Admiral. Their technology has barely advanced in the 4 decades we've observed them. They fight among themselves with crude weapons. Their cities are chaotic and inefficient. They pollute their own world with reckless abandon." Krell's report was the same one he'd given countless times before. "I recommend we classify Earth as a level 0 threat and move our observation fleet to more pressing concerns." Admiral Vax's image flickered as the transmission processed across the vast distance. "And what of the energy readings your junior officer keeps reporting?" Krell's scales darkened further. "Natural phenomena, sir. Officer Nix is young and inexperienced. She sees patterns where none exist. The humans lack the technology to create the kind of energy signatures she claims to detect." "Very well, Commander. Maintain observation for another planetary cycle, then prepare to withdraw. The Empire has more pressing matters than watching a species that will likely destroy itself within the next century." As the communication ended, Krell felt a sense of satisfaction. Soon he would be free of this tedious assignment and could return to more meaningful work. Behind him, Officer Nix continued to study her sensor readings, her scales cycling through shades of deep concern. The first sign, 3 days later, everything changed. Nix was conducting her routine sensor sweep when her equipment registered something impossible. The energy signature from the location she had designated as Source Point 1 had suddenly increased by 3,000%. Before she could alert Commander Krell, Source Point 2 began showing the same massive energy spike. Then 3. Then 4. "Commander." Nix's voice cut across the bridge, her scales now flashing the bright red of emergency. "All 17 source points are activating simultaneously." Krell rushed to the sensor station, his 4 eyes focusing on readings that made no sense. The energy levels were beyond anything their science could explain. Each source point was generating enough power to supply a major imperial city. "This is impossible," Krell muttered, his own scales beginning to show the first hints of fear. "The humans don't have this technology. They can't have this technology." On the main view screen, Earth appeared peaceful as always. Cities glowed with their primitive electric lights. Cloud formations swirled in familiar patterns. Nothing seemed different from the surface. But deep beneath the ocean, something ancient was stirring. The Deep Awakening, in the deepest trenches of Earth's Pacific Ocean. Massive structures that had slept for decades were coming to life. The Leviathan class, defense platforms buried beneath miles of sediment and hidden from any possible detection, received their activation signals. Fusion reactors that had waited in cold standby mode began their startup sequences. Computer systems built with technology far beyond what humanity displayed to the world began processing tactical data accumulated over 40 years of careful observation. The humans hadn't been idle during the Zapirian watch. They had been preparing. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the deep command facility, carved into the rock beneath the Mariana Trench, 7 miles below the ocean's surface. Her team of engineers and military specialists had spent their entire careers working in absolute secrecy, building Earth's true defense network. The surface world knew nothing of their existence. As far as most of humanity was concerned, Earth's military consisted of conventional armies, navies, and air forces. The truth was far more complex. "All Leviathan platforms are online," reported Captain Torres, his voice steady, despite the magnitude of what they were about to unleash. "Fusion reactors at full power. Weapon systems charging. The aliens are about to learn what we've really been doing down here." Dr. Vasquez nodded, her fingers dancing across holographic controls that would have seemed like magic to the surface world. 43 years they've been watching us. 43 years they've thought we were primitive. They counted our surface fleets and measured our public technology and assumed that was all we had. She paused, looking at the tactical display showing the positions of every Zapirian ship in the system. They never looked deep enough. The rising storm, the first sign of Earth's true nature, came from the deepest part of the Atlantic Ocean. The water itself seemed to bulge upward as something massive displaced millions of tons of seawater. The Zapirian sensors trained on the surface detected the disturbance but couldn't identify its source. Then the ocean exploded. A ship emerged from the depths, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Leviathan-class vessel, Deep Guardian, breached the surface like a metal whale, water cascading from its hull in torrents. But this was no whale. The ship stretched for over 2 miles, its dark hull covered in armor that absorbed and redirected energy. As it rose higher, leaving the ocean entirely, massive weapon arrays became visible along its flanks. "Commander," Nix's voice was barely controlled panic. "Something is rising from their ocean. It's enormous." Before Krell could respond, similar disturbances erupted across the globe. The Arctic ice sheet cracked and split as another Leviathan emerged from beneath the frozen wasteland. The Sahara Desert erupted in fountains of sand as a third ship rose, from underground hangars hidden beneath the dunes. One by one, 17 locations around Earth revealed their secrets. The humans had not been building primitive surface fleets. They had been constructing guardian ships in the deepest, most hidden places on their planet. Each vessel was a masterpiece of engineering that surpassed anything in the Zapirian arsenal. "This is impossible," Commander Krell whispered, his scales now cycling through every shade of fear his species could display. "The humans, they're not primitive at all." The revelation as the 17 Leviathan-class ships took their positions around Earth, something even more disturbing became clear. To the watching aliens, the human vessels weren't crude metal constructs held together with primitive welding. They were works of art, their hulls seamlessly integrated with technology that seemed to merge metal with living tissue. Energy flowed through their structures, in patterns that resembled neural networks. These ships weren't just built, they had been grown. Officer Nix's sensors detected communication patterns between the ships that used quantum entanglement for instantaneous coordination. The humans had developed faster-than-light communication while pretending their best technology was simple radio waves. "Sir," Nix's voice was barely a whisper. "They're not just technologically advanced, they're far beyond us. Those ships, they're using principles of physics we don't even understand." Commander Krell felt something he had never experienced in his long military career: complete and utter terror. The Zapirian Empire had built its reputation on technological superiority. They conquered worlds by demonstrating the vast gap between their advanced civilization and the primitive species they encountered. But Earth had closed that gap and then exceeded it, while maintaining the perfect illusion of backwardness. The humans had been watching the Watchers. The message, as if responding to the aliens' growing fear, all human communication frequencies suddenly cleared. The chaotic chatter of billions of humans, the radio and television signals that had provided constant background noise for 40 years, fell silent. In that silence, a single voice emerged, broadcast on frequencies the Zapirians had thought were beyond human technology. "Attention, vessels of the Zapirian Empire." The voice was calm, professional, and spoke in perfect Zapirian language. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Network. We have been aware of your presence since your arrival 43 years, 2 months, and 16 days ago." The transmission continued, and with each word, Commander Krell felt his understanding of the universe crumble. "We have monitored your communications, studied your technology, and prepared for this moment. You have observed Earth and concluded that we are primitive and harmless. This was intentional. We allowed you to see only what we wanted you to see." On the bridge of the eternal gaze, every Zapirian officer stood frozen, their scales displaying the colors of absolute shock. "We do not seek conflict, but we will not tolerate continued surveillance of our world. You have 1 standard hour to begin your departure from this system. Any vessel remaining after that time will be considered hostile." The transmission ended, leaving the alien fleet in stunned silence. The awakening storm, the Council of War 7 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean. In the crystalline halls of Deep Command, Admiral Chen stood before the largest holographic display ever constructed. The 3-dimensional image showed every ship, every weapon, every strategic position in the solar system. Around her, the finest military minds Earth had ever produced worked at stations that pulsed with energy drawn from the planet's core itself. Chen had spent 30 years of her life preparing for this moment. She had been a young officer when the Zapirian fleet first arrived, had watched through hidden sensors as the alien ships took their positions and began their long surveillance, while the surface world continued its normal routines, unaware of the Watchers above. Chen and thousands of others had dedicated their lives to building Earth's true defense. "Status report," Chen commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned her position through decades of preparation rather than political appointment. Captain Marcus Webb, Director of Planetary Defense, stepped forward. His uniform bore no insignia that the surface world would recognize, but in the hidden halls of Deep Command, he was one of the most powerful people on Earth. "All 17 Leviathan-class vessels are fully operational, Admiral. The Zapirian fleet appears to be in a state of shock. Their formation has completely broken down, and our sensors detect massive electromagnetic disruptions across their ships. They're panicking." Chen nodded. The psychological impact had been exactly what they'd hoped for. The Zapirians had spent 4 decades believing they held every advantage. The revelation that they were not only being watched in return, but had been outmaneuvered by a supposedly primitive species, would shake them to their core. "What about the secondary defense platforms?" Chen asked. "The Kraken-class deep space interceptors are holding position at the outer system boundaries," Webb reported. "If any Zapirian vessel attempts to flee and then return with reinforcements, they'll find our real perimeter waiting for them." This was the masterstroke of Earth's defense strategy. The Leviathans were impressive, but they were meant to be seen. The real guardians of the solar system were the Kraken-class ships, built in the emptiness between worlds, hidden in the shadow of asteroids and disguised as space debris. The Zapirians had been watching Earth while Earth's true fleet watched them. The hidden truth doctor. James Morrison, Earth's chief science officer for the Deep Command project, approached the Admiral with a tablet containing the most classified information in human history. His weathered face showed the strain of keeping secrets that could reshape humanity's understanding of itself. Admiral, we've completed the final analysis of Zapirian technology based on 43 years of observation. The results are interesting. Chen took the tablet, her eyes scanning data that few humans would ever see. Summarize, Doctor. They're not as advanced as they think they are. Their ships are powerful, yes, but they rely on brute force rather than elegant engineering. Their energy systems are inefficient. Their computers are fast but lack true intelligence. They've achieved interstellar travel, but they've done it the hard way. Morrison paused, a slight smile crossing his face. We've been comparing their technology to our public achievements and assuming they were superior. But when we compare them to what we've built down here, in secret, we're actually ahead of them in most areas. This revelation had been the key to Earth's confidence. The Zapirians had superior numbers and established manufacturing bases across multiple star systems. But ship for ship, weapon for weapon, Earth's hidden fleet was more advanced. How is that possible? Chen had asked this question many times over the years, but the answer still amazed her. Because we had to be better, Admiral. They had the luxury of overwhelming force. We had the necessity of perfection. Every system we built had to work flawlessly because we would only get one chance to use it. That pressure created innovation they've never experienced. The Zapirian response aboard the Eternal Gaze, Commander Krell was experiencing the worst day of his military career. The careful order of his bridge had dissolved into barely controlled chaos as officers tried to comprehend what they were facing. The humans had revealed capabilities that challenged everything the Zapirian Empire understood about technological development. Sir, Admiral Vax is requesting an immediate communication, Officer Nix reported, her scales now permanently fixed in the pale yellow of extreme stress. The holographic image of Admiral Vax appeared, but even across the vast distance the Elder's confusion was evident. Commander, explain to me how a primitive species has just threatened the Imperial Navy with weapons we cannot identify. Krell's scales cycled through several colors before settling on the dark purple of professional embarrassment. Sir, it appears our intelligence was incomplete. The humans have been concealing their true technological capabilities. The ships that have emerged from their planet show engineering principles that exceed our own. That is impossible, Commander. The Empire has surveyed thousands of worlds. We understand the normal progression of technological development. No species advances from primitive to superior without intermediate stages we would have detected. With respect, Admiral, they did show intermediate stages. They simply showed them to us while developing something entirely different in secret. Every advancement we observed was designed to reinforce our belief that they were decades behind us technologically. The communication channel fell silent as Admiral Vax processed this information. The implications were staggering. If the humans could conceal such massive technological achievements, what else might they be hiding? What other species had the Empire underestimated? The demonstration. As if sensing the alien confusion, Admiral Chen decided to provide a clearer picture of Earth's capabilities. From Deep Command, she transmitted activation codes to the Leviathan Stormbearer, positioned high above the Pacific Ocean. Captain Rodriguez, commanding the Stormbearer, received his orders with grim satisfaction. For 20 years he had trained for this moment, running simulations and drills in the deepest secrecy. Now, finally, he could show the galaxy what human engineering could accomplish. Target the asteroid belt. Chen's voice came through the quantum communication array. Designation, Asteroid 77 Alpha, full power demonstration. Rodriguez nodded to his weapons officer. You heard the Admiral. Show them what the Helios cannon can do. The Helios cannon was humanity's masterpiece of directed energy weapons. Unlike the crude beam weapons used by most spacefaring species, the Helios system created a controlled stellar reaction, essentially creating a miniature star and directing its energy in a focused beam. The power requirements were enormous, but the Leviathan-class ships had been built around their weapons rather than the other way around. The Stormbearer rotated slowly, its massive hull adjusting to bring the Helios cannon to bear on a target over 200 million miles away. Energy began to build within the weapon's core, and space itself seemed to bend around the ship as gravitational forces were manipulated to contain the mounting power. Then, in a flash of light that was visible from Earth's surface, the Helios cannon fired. The beam crossed the solar system in seconds, striking asteroid 77 Alpha with the force of a small star. The asteroid, roughly the size of Manhattan, simply ceased to exist. It didn't explode or break apart. It was converted to energy so quickly that it left nothing behind but a brief flash of light. The galaxy watches unknown to either the humans or the Zapirians. The demonstration had been observed by more than just the immediate participants. The destruction of asteroid 77 Alpha had been detected by monitoring stations across the galaxy. Within hours, the news had spread through the interstellar communication networks used by dozens of species. Earth, the small blue world, that most of the galaxy had never heard of, had just demonstrated a weapons technology that surpassed anything in known space. The energy output required to completely vaporize an asteroid of that size suggested a level of engineering that challenged the established order of galactic civilization. On the distant world of Kepler Prime, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Hall to discuss the implications of humanity's revelation. The power readings from the Earth demonstration exceed anything in our databases, reported Counselor Thax, a being whose species had mastered energy manipulation before humans had discovered fire. If they can mount such weapons on individual ships, their military potential is beyond calculation. More concerning is the deception, added Counselor Erin, whose people specialized in intelligence gathering. They maintained a facade of primitiveness for decades while developing technology that surpasses our own. What other species might be doing the same? The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. The galaxy's established powers had built their dominance on the assumption that they could accurately assess the capabilities of other species. If humanity could fool the Zapirian Empire for over 4 decades, the entire structure of galactic politics was built on false assumptions. The choice back in Earth's solar system, Commander Krell faced the most important decision of his career. The human deadline was approaching rapidly, and his fleet had to choose between retreat and a battle they now realized they could not win. Commander, Officer Nix approached with the latest sensor readings. Our analysis of the human weapons suggests they could destroy our entire fleet before we could mount an effective response. Their ships are faster, more maneuverable, and armed with weapons that exceed our defensive capabilities. Krell studied the tactical display, his experienced military mind acknowledging the impossible truth. The Zapirian Empire, masters of space for over 1,000 years, had encountered a species that had surpassed them in every meaningful way. "Signal the fleet," Krell commanded, his voice heavy with the weight of defeat. "All ships will begin immediate departure from the Sol system. We will return to Imperial space and report our findings to High Command." As the Zapirian ships powered up their faster-than-light drives, Admiral Chen received the confirmation she had been waiting for. The alien fleet was leaving. Their surveillance of Earth finally ended. But she knew this was not the end of the story. Word of humanity's capabilities would spread throughout the galaxy. Some species would seek alliance with Earth. Others would see humanity as a threat to be eliminated. The age of hiding was over. Standing in the crystal halls of Deep Command, surrounded by the technology that had defended Earth from an interstellar empire, Admiral Chen looked up at the display showing the vast galaxy that lay beyond their solar system. "Prepare the fleet for full activation," she commanded. "It's time for humanity to take its place among the stars." The nightmare was just beginning, but this time, humanity would not be the ones who were afraid.